everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have the pleasure of interviewing Sarah Mayfield, who has been a nationally certified compassionate bereavement care counselor since 2007. Sarah has both a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Counselor Education from the University of Virginia. Her certification is in Thanatology, a field that thoughtfully examines the emotional, psychological, and social aspects of death, dying, and grief. Before she entered grief counseling, Sarah spent 9 meaningful years as an elementary school counselor. Her journey into grief advocacy was born from her heartbreak over the sudden passing of her 1.5-year-old son, Elliot. When Sarah sought informed grief support for her surviving son, Bradley, she found that little existed, and that moment became a catalyst for Sarah, who now works at a nonprofit grief center in Richmond, Virginia, offering compassionate counseling for both youth and adults, navigating the complexities of trauma and grief. Sarah often draws from Bradley's journey to advocate for what grieving children truly need: acknowledgment, space, and voices that affirm their right to mourn. In her debut picture book, This Sure Thing, she offers a gentle and lyrical exploration of continuing bonds after death, shining light on childhood grief and the sacred thread of love that endures. I'm looking forward to talking with Sarah, who is joining us from Richmond, Virginia, for a heartfelt conversation about Elliott's passing, how she and Bradley's journey through grief has unfolded over time, the powerful signs and enduring connections she still experiences with Elliot, the courage of acceptance, and practical ways to support grieving youth. We'll also explore Sarah's debut picture book, This Sure Thing, grief's nuanced relationship with anxiety, the different ways mourning is expressed, and more, for what is surely going to be an enlightening, insightful, and deeply moving conversation not to be missed. Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Irene.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. First, Irene, I need to get you to write my bios from here on out. I'm sitting here like, wow, I need to tap into her talent. That was amazing.
You know oh, thank you. Well, you know what? Make that happen.
Workshop.
We can send you a
Cool.
copy or something. Sure. Absolutely. I'm happy to share.
But thank you so much for those kind words and the heart behind them. I heard a lot of, depth and meaning to what you wrote. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I feel for you, and I also admire your path. Wasn't an easy path, and good for you. And you're helping a lot of people with it. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. And yeah.
It's wonderful what you've done. So let's begin, though, with the crux of this conversation.
Sure.
Which is about your precious Elliot and your precious Bradley. So could you share Elliot with us? His joy. I know he was a very joyful, tender child. And how did he pass?
Yeah. Thanks, Irene. And thanks. As with in sessions that I lead with, grievers, I'm a firm believer of get right to it, right? Don't leave it hanging. Get right to it. The crux, as you said. So first let's start with Bradley, since he's our oldest child. So my husband and I, Terry, we got married. Oh gosh, we got married in 2012. It took me a second there, Irene. And then, we started talking about building a family, and along came Bradley in 2014. He's now a 6th grader. Hard to believe. Yeah, right. And so after Bradley was born and after we, dealt with his stubbornness and wild openness, we decided, hey, it would be great for him to have a companion and for us to build our family. And so along came Elliot in November of 2016. And I think my husband got it the best. He described him as sweet boy. That was just his phrase for him. Hey, sweet boy. Hi, sweet boy. Because fundamentally, he just was the sweetest. Very carefree. I can remember, right behind me in this room, in our living room, I can remember him running from room to room and just his boisterous laugh. Like it was just so energetic and kind of drew everybody in who was around him, right?
Yeah, everybody fell in love with him.
Yeah, he was a lovable kind of kid, right?
Right.
And there's so many cool pictures and images of, that I look back on, of course, of Bradley and Elliot playing together. And that just made my heart sing, seeing them together and just what they were building and their relationship. And that was exactly what we wanted, right? And that's what we hoped for and planned. And so it was February, when Elliot was about almost a year and a half old, he had a runny nose, not even perceptible, honestly, just still running around. We had pictures of him in the doctor's office that evening. My husband lifting him up to touch the giant crown on the ceiling at the pediatrician's. And so just energetic, still having a great time. We are the helicopter parents that probably shouldn't have even gone in. Who knows, right? So nothing to worry about. Tested negative on everything. Gave him some ibuprofen, put him to bed. Nothing out of the ordinary. My husband likes to say that his spider sense, like Spider-Man, never went off. And so he kind of blames himself for that. But there was, looking back, and it's taken a long time to say this, right? Because we look for everything. There really was nothing out of the ordinary. Fast forward till around 6 a.m. in the morning, I remember thinking, I didn't really hear much. We still had a baby monitor because, once again, helicopter parents, even at a year and a half.
I could understand that.
Yeah. So I remember thinking, that's weird. I never really heard anything on the monitor. He historically would maybe wake up once or twice in the night and then roll over and go back to sleep. So I went in to check on him. And the first thing that struck me was that, his legs were still tucked up under him. And so when I went to touch him, he was cold. And yeah, he had been gone for some time. And so I picked him up and I just knew it was final. It was done. There was nothing I could do. And so I remember distinctly, it's, it's almost like you're out of your body and you're above and you can kind of picture it. I can still do that, right?
Of course.
And with time, it's gotten easier to picture it, right? So I can remember standing at the top of our stairs, in the other room there, and just screaming for my husband, who had already gotten up and had started working. He does IT. So there's never off hours with that, right?
Right.
And so I looked down, I handed him over to my husband when he arrived, and I said, he's dead. And so my husband kind of collapsed with him onto the middle of the flight of stairs. And so that was another image that's marked in my brain of my husband sobbing over his body and holding him. And I'll be honest, I never thought once to call 911 because what's the point? Right? What's the point? I can be very logical, and that was my thought was, what would they do? So we still called, and they, unfortunately, the MO, as I'm sure you're aware, is for CPR to be performed even if it's not necessary. And there's many reasons for that, but one of them is for the survivors to know that they did everything they could. And so my husband has his own trauma and his own memories of doing CPR on Elliot, obviously to no avail. And then the day just enveloped. And luckily, so here's the thing, you can see little protective factors here and there, little things. My son, Bradley, right, at the time is almost 4, and he's sleeping in the room right next to the top of the stairs. So when I'm screaming and when there's all this ruckus and he hears everything. But did he wake up that morning? No. He slept through it all. And we have a beautiful neighbor next door, Mrs. Sherry and Mr. Robert, who are retired. And I remember running over there and just screaming. It was 6 a.m. underneath their window because we have no family that's local. Screaming into their window and asking for them to come to the window. I didn't have shoes on. It's just primal, right? It's just reactionary. And so our beautiful neighbors came over, and Bradley left without seeing anything or knowing anything. At that point, the police had responded, and we had called them, and they had come to the scene. And I remember asking the police officer if he could stand under the stairs because I didn't want my son's memory to be of seeing a police officer in the house and having that kind of concern.
That was tremendous presence for you to think of that.
Yeah, I guess I think that's when you mentioned my love for working with kids and my awareness of youth and kind of their needs. I think that's always kind of something in the back of my head. So that's maybe why I thought of that. But like, I got chills right now. One of the things that makes me in a horrible, horrific, I use the word horror because it felt like a horror movie. In a time that it was that horrific, I feel we talk about dualities. I know we're going to get that. So I'm carrying this horror of what happened, but I also can feel this gratefulness that my living son, for all intensive purposes, was exposed to nothing. Right. And so then later that day, my family did arrive. My parents arrived and were there. They camped out for weeks at our house and were very helpful. But I remember sitting there and having to tell Bradley when he came back after we come back from the hospital, after all the things were tended to. And I'm sitting there thinking, I need to tell him the longer I wait, the harder it will get. And so I sat on the floor in front of him and just used the words I didn't want to say, right? And was very direct and very blunt. Because being a former school counselor, I know that we don't play with terms or euphemisms when talking to youth. We are direct, even if it hurts. So I told him that his brother had died, and we processed it for a little bit, as much as a 4-year-old in the moment is going to. And then I remember thinking, well, we can grieve here with this shell shock, this bomb that has gone off in our house, or we can go to a playground. It's bizarre, you're right. I have actually a picture that my mom took of us sitting at the playground and me looking like an absolute zombie. And it's just like the
juxtaposition.
This dystopian, good word, thank you. Juxtaposition of this playground and these primary colors and this happiness, right? And then I'm sitting there not making eye contact, just, right, but reeling at the same time. So that's setting the stage for how it, developed. And thank you for asking, because I know that each time we tell our story and each time we share it, it lifts a little bit. It does something. It morphs. It moves. So thank you.
Right. You're welcome. Well, I know you've gotten some powerful signs.
Yeah.
And enduring connections that you've experienced with Elliot, and has Bradley gotten them also?
Yeah.
Do they help him? Has that comforted him that his brother's still around him?
Yeah. So good question. Thanks for asking that. I'm going to be honest, you probably can see the logical and the rational side of my brain with how I respond in especially, certain situations, which has its pros and cons, right? And I can remember thinking, well, I'll just be honest, in the first 6 months or so, I believe that trauma can be so loud and noisy and distracting, panic, anxiety, fear, that I was not necessarily receptive or open.
Absolutely. It blocked everything.
Or able to see any darn thing, right? And so I can remember going to support groups, and I'll get into this later, but going to support groups and hearing other brave parents talk about seeing signs, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not noticing anything, I'm not feeling anything. But I remember it was just so, how can you see when you have blinders on?
You're closed down.
Closed down. But slowly, as I think I worked on the trauma, as I told the story, as I processed it, right? As I sat with things like guilt and regret, it started to lift a little bit.
That's another lesson, though.
Yeah,
right? You go through what you went through, and the same with your husband, to be able to get to a point to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
To sometimes life hands you
Yep.
terrible things, and you don't have control over everything.
Right. And I think but as a parent, when the one job you have is to keep your kid alive.
Oh, yeah.
That is a very, very tough truth to sit with. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I like to also delineate, sidebar, but I like to delineate a lot of times between regret and guilt. I know fundamentally, did I do anything wrong? No. I didn't. Guilt versus regret. Regret is when you wish something had gone differently. There's something that you wish had been slightly different, right? Wish I had done that, wish I didn't do that. Guilt, however, is when, in my opinion, there's something fundamentally that maybe was done wrong that amends need to be taken for it. And so I think that's also helpful, not only with myself, but with clients who hear that, because 9 out of 10 times, like you said, it was just the hand we were dealt. It doesn't mean that we necessarily did anything wrong. even if it feels that way sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your question was about signs. Sorry,
So what have
Irene.
you seen? No, that's okay. So you're processing and you're not believing, but now obviously things started. This was into the first year. So now you're moving into your second year. So I imagine you started opening up a little bit.
It started the gauze, the haze, the just the loudness. I call it loud, even though it's definitely quiet trauma, right? It's just so distracting and so confusing. And so as that started to like ebb a bit, yes, I think I became more okay, right? Or receptive to feeling and sensing Elliot and seeing him. I think there's also a fear, if I'm honest, that I hear sometimes with other bereaved, parents and grievers. What if we're receptive and then there's nothing there, right? There's a fear of putting yourself out there and then being disappointed. So that, just to be 100% honest, might have been a little bit of my personality as well. I think the thing that has struck me the most is just there's this thing that happens, and it's just so interesting and unique that anywhere I go, when I'm receptive and I'm open to it, right? I will start seeing ease, and it does not make any sense at all. It's nonsensical. The time I walked into the grocery store and there are, it's Christmas time, there's all these stockings, and none of them are monogrammed, but there's one. We're talking out of 100 that's monogrammed with a cursive E on it. Right. I ended a support group at the job where I currently work for bereaved parents. And as I was cleaning up, one of the candles I blew out spilled a perfect E on the table at the end of the bereaved group for parents. As I'm putting furniture in my new office, this one gives me chills. There is this one little sticker in a corner, and I almost missed it, right? When you pack furniture and it tells you E goes with D and put F here. I find one little sticker like this big in the corner of the new office that is inspired. The reason I'm doing this is because of Elliot and because of Bradley, right? I find it in the very corner, and it was just, whoa, talk about confirmation that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, I have to say that I enjoy stories like yours because when they come when they come from those of us who were former skeptics, who can really relate
Skeptics, yeah.
to all the people who said, what is this? This is baloney. And then now you're getting evidence in your logical mind. Is not in concurrence with this, but whoa.
But it's beating me over the head with it over and over again.
Hello,
yes.
I'm here, Mom. I'm here, Mom. I'm here.
Right. And then in my office at my current work, I'm putting away, I do crafts with youth that are grieving. So there's all these kind of fun things. And I'm putting away these little bubble letters. And the one that I find later that falls on the floor is this cute little yellow bubble E. And so at that point, I just had to just kind of giggle or laugh or be like, okay, because it was just, like I said, it was almost, persistent in, okay, Mom, maybe that one was a coincidence, but what about this one? Right.
Right. We're going to get you, Mom. One way or the other. You're going to see this. I'm here,
yes.
Mom. I'm here, Mom.
Right.
So you were in a group, I'm hearing. You were in a grief support group. What
Correct.
other healing modalities helped you with your grief? What else did you do? And did you see a medium or do the spiritual part too? What did you do?
So I did the grief support group, and then I've also done general grief support groups as well. And I'll be honest, Irene, being there as a griever and attending for myself has been very valuable. But then, in the background that I have in counseling, leading the groups or facilitating the groups has been equally as healing for me because I get to witness, other people's stories and grief and learn from them. Each person in front of me, I learn something from. And so I would argue being a group member as well as being the facilitator has been just as powerful. And so I'm going to say some of the things I did on my complete own, right? One of my favorite absolute grounding practices is to just go out into the woods and just walk, right? It's the one time that I think my brain is not in overdrive.
It also brings you into the present moment, right?
Absolutely.
So
I'm sitting there. Yep.
All over the place.
Well, you better be in the present moment when you see the copperhead, like I did the other week, you got to be in the present moment. Well, it was kind of, it's world, not mine, right? To some degree. So just that grounding that I experience from being in nature and having the sounds, the senses, being in the present 100%. Because our mind can go, whoa, right? And run with things. And what if, and down the road. And to some degree, yeah, that matters, but none of it really, right?
But
There's
you
a
know what?
trap.
I'm also thinking you're doing all these healing modalities. So
Mm-hmm.
you're getting a lot of information. And then when you get into nature, you're doing that walking and all in some way, you're able to process what
Yeah.
you've been learning and what's going on.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
right? As you're walking and you're doing that. I happen to have in my life, I happen to have a view of trees right outside my balcony, and I love sitting there. I find them very grounding and very comforting. I really relate to what you're saying. So please explain also for everyone listening what you call the dualities of grief.
Hmm.
And how you've personally experienced dualities of grief since Elliot transitioned, which I relate to also. Would you like to share that?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll go back to that morning when I'm sitting there in front of Bradley and telling him that his brother died, right? It hits you. I have this living child. I have this kid that is living, and I have this kid who has died. Two very distinct worlds, essentially, right? And so with Elliot's death, I have a myriad of complicated emotions that have to do with that are ever shifting. They're never stagnant. And so, especially in the beginning, I had to carry, like I mentioned before, the guilt, the regret, the pain. I use the word horror, all those really heavy, heavy, heavy
Absolutely. And you're
things,
also involved in a relationship with a husband who's grieving.
right? As well. And grieving differently, right? We have our own styles. And so sitting there seeing my living son and realizing I need to do the best I can to be present for him while also honoring my grief and attending to that, it kind of can pull you like different ways, right? I have learned, with practice and with time that I can carry that pain, right? I can honor the pain for my son's death and for Elliot not being here. But at the same time, I can also feel that joy and that pride that I have in my living son. And now I have a living daughter as well, Grace.
Bless
She's
you.
5. Thank you. And so, and that can feel really weird because you can feel kind of guilty that you're celebrating your living children, but then where's the one that's not here? So
Well, I like to
dualities.
say, like with what someone like you, what you've gone through, if someone says how many children you have, I have 3. 2 are here and 1 is on the other side, but
Mm-hmm.
he's still in your life. He's
Mm-hmm.
still
Absolutely. It's weird. In the beginning, I would feel guilty if I didn't say that because I was just having a rough day and I didn't have the emotional energy to answer that question. Now I just take it on a case by case basis and I don't feel guilty about it. I kind of, in an instinct, Irene, I will kind of feel how I feel about the person who's asking really quickly and whether I feel safe going there with them. And if I give them this information, will it be honored or will it be awkward or dismissed? And it's a snap judgment, right? But
yeah.
that's what I do. So
That's right. Which all brings us to your wonderful debut picture book, which I enjoyed. It's called This Short Thing, and it's a heartfelt children's book that explores love, memory, and healing through the eyes of a grieving sibling. So we're talking Bradley and all the siblings out there who have the unfortunate experience of losing a sibling. So what would you like to tell us about your beautiful book that people can purchase to help them talk to this other child who has survived?
yeah, yeah. So the first thing, the joke, Irene, is that I hated journaling. I couldn't write anything, not a damn thing. I didn't want to. I resented it. I would read C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed and think, wow, that's so cool that he did that for his wife, in the raw. Yet I had this block. Like I just didn't want to. I think I was just angry, right? And thought, what the hell would a couple words on a piece of paper do for me? Huh, right? And then 2 years roughly later, something just came the hell over me. I'm cussing a lot, Irene. Stick with me.
I enjoy it. It doesn't bother
Okay,
me
good.
at all.
Yeah, clients and I, we stay real.
I'm a Jersey girl. Come on.
Great. Well, let's get the hell in it. So, it was just weird. It was like January 3rd, and I remember thinking, I have to write. And I have to write about this specific thing, about Bradley's grief. It was this part of me, obviously, I talked earlier about my love of watching them be together and how joyful that was for me. And I think this was, yes, my grief is really difficult and I'm always in it and always managing it, but not seeing the pain my son was going through with his brother no longer being there was torture. And so this was a way for me to express that, honor it, right? And then also siblings are the forgotten mourner. There's a phrase for it. Just because of the way things are, parents, adults usually get most of the attention. And because kids present maybe as happy and not as outwardly grieving as we would think, like adults do, we assume they're fine, they're resilient, they're going to be okay. So they don't get as much attention. And so this was something that I feel like children's grief is often disenfranchised. It is not socially, acknowledged and given the attention it deserves. And so for me, this just felt on multiple layers like it was something I had to do. And man, it was frenzied, and I wrote it within a day or two max. And it's metered, so that I don't think I'm ever going to write a metered book before again, because every single syllable matters, and that's like a puzzle. And so once it came out of me, I remember standing over there in the kitchen reading it to my husband, and we just both were bawling while I read it, and it just felt like this huge release, this catharsis that happened.
In a way, it feels almost like you channeled it, like it came right through you.
Yeah, I know. It was bizarre what came over me, for sure.
That's amazing. It's a beautiful book. I really encourage people
to
check it out. And we'll have it links in show notes and all of that for everyone.
Thank you. That's really sweet.
My pleasure. And it's going to help a lot of people. And how would you say the courage and power of acceptance, which you learned to do when it comes to loss, you will say that opens us to the possibility of life. Could you explain that to everyone?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I was just talking about this concept earlier today with a griever, and we were just spitballing a little bit. It's fun to talk about, concepts and themes in grief. And we were talking about how, you could almost see accepting or coming to terms with a loss on a continuum, with maybe understanding at one end, acceptance somewhere in the middle, and then resignation somewhere on the other end, right? And so we were talking about how it's kind of a fluid process, as much of grief is. I am a firm believer that I don't know that I will ever, this side of the veil, have understanding why Elliot died. But I think my journey and grieving and what I am doing has a lot to do with, as you said, acceptance. Accepting that he's no longer here, and then letting that inform how I move forward in my life and what I do and how I find meaning and how I have continuing bonds with him. So the understanding thing, I don't know. I can't wrap my mind around it,
Well, in a way, though, I'm going to contribute something, because when they pulled me out of the car, and a lot of people listening to this podcast know my story, when they pulled me out of the car, I said to myself that I will get through this somehow, because I was scripting myself. I was actually programming myself that I was going to get through this for the sake of my surviving son, for my son.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the message that I got when my spiritual awakening happened 2 months before the accident was, Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. Now look at what you've done in your life. It doesn't make sense to us over here, but look at what you've done in your life and what you've learned and all, and how what's happened to you has probably enriched your compassion and empathy and your offerings to others who are going through different experiences.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Some way, it's informed your soul purpose, probably.
Oh, 100%. How can there's a quote by Kessler and Kubler-Ross that says, like, how could a loss of this magnitude not impact moving forward? You don't want life to be the same, nor should it be, because that's how big the person's life meant to you. That's how significant they are to you. Irene, you mentioned that, and like hearing, I want to just mention that when I was pregnant with Elliot, talk about weird, I remember having it was mainly an auditory dream, and I was laying there. And it was visual in that all I saw was orange. And I remember a voice, like you've talked about as well. essentially saying, remember, this is all just a dress rehearsal.
You were getting some kind of
I was
heads
getting
up.
something. And so I had some clarity when I woke up, and I just look back and find it interesting that was when I was pregnant with Elliot and before anything
Right.
happened.
Right. It's takes you back when you think about
Mm-hmm.
how some things are not an accident, as
Mm-hmm.
horrible as they are, right? So, how about you talk about that there are enduring myths of grief that you have discovered.
Mm-hmm.
And this really intrigued me also because I found it to be true that seems to have a relationship with anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, in a way, I was told once that if you're an anxious person and you lose someone, so maybe your anxiety fuels your grief even more, right? And
Yeah.
that's the anxiety is the root. But you want to explain that to people? What are some of the enduring myths of grief? And
Yeah, sure. And then tie in anxiety as well. Okay. Well, I think let's just lay it out there. The number one most big grief out there that I still hear, even from non-grief professionals, non-grief counselors in the field, is about the stages of grief. And I swear all of us just cringe when we look at it. You went, oh.
I'm familiar with this.
If
Yes.
I can debunk anything, it's just saying, no, there are no stages of grief. It is way more complicated and convoluted than that. It is not linear. It is not pretty. It does not, we cannot predict what we will be feeling and how we will be dealing with it in the future. So while Kubler-Ross did a lot to put death and loss on the map, also it's important to remember it was her work on someone who was dying and their own thought process about their own death. While we appreciate everything she did, and she did a huge thing to get the ball rolling on everything and was just very powerful, society has kind of misunderstood it, I think. And so that's the first myth. No stages of grief. It's more like cooked spaghetti noodles against the wall. It's just
I can
tangled,
relate.
convoluted,
Right.
turns, makes no sense, right? So that's kind of the biggest one. The second one that kind of impacted me had to do with just how we grieve, how we are expected to look. I know we were chatting a little bit about this before, that I would show up to a support group and I am not highly emotive in a group setting, right? At home by myself, all bets are off. But in a group setting, I tend to go more into the logical and observing and listening mode. And so I am not going to be outwardly crying or emotive. Not always, but for the most part. And so I was told on many occasions by well-meaning group members, to let it go, that it's not good to hold it back, right? That kind of thing. And I remember walking away from groups on multiple occasions thinking I was doing it wrong. And that didn't feel good, to be like, oh no, not only do I feel like crap because I'm grieving my son, but I'm doing it wrong on top of that. So I think just knowing that there is no one right or wrong way to grieve, and that there's many different ways to express it and to carry it with you. And that, yes, while men and women are often put into the buckets of women being more emotive and men being more doers and less emotive, I would argue my husband and I were kind of the opposite. So I saw that on a firsthand. So no stages, it looks different for everybody, and having the freedom to express it differently. And then I think the last one we're going to get into later is how children look like they aren't grieving, how youth often
Right.
look like they
Well,
aren't.
let's go right there.
Okay, let's go there.
Right there.
That's another myth.
Right.
Even though we can see, like for instance, Bradley would cry. Honestly, anger was a lot of the reaction we saw from him, hitting the wall in preschool, that kind of thing. His person was there and then they're gone. It makes your head spin, right? And that's an attachment that's just being severed. And so then he's out in the playground playing and having a good time. And so if someone's not familiar with youth and grieving, it looks like, oh, okay, he's fine now, right? It's very small snippets here and there, sound bites. But what we know, in fact, is obviously it has a lot to do with attention span, right? And developmental stages, the way that grieving looks. And as we get older, it looks different, right? In general, of course, there's differences as well. So that would be another myth that I kind of clap back on a bit is no, just because it doesn't look the same doesn't mean it's not grief. Also, I think I alluded to this in the book that hearing kids are resilient or that they're too young to remember, those are all excuses we make to feel less pain, to minimize the pain of a kid who's grieving. We don't say that about adults. So it really gets me going when those are things we say to make ourselves feel better for what this young kid is going through.
Well, you feel better, but that kid has all
That's
this
exactly
grief
right.
and they're storing it, and they may not be able to express it right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they may not be able to express it right now, but it's gonna pop up when they're in their 20s or their 30s or whatever unless they resolve it, right?
Yeah, and also what we're teaching them is that when we say, "Oh, it's not that bad," you're, not grieving, then we're modeling that for them and telling them that's not big grief, that's not big loss, that's not a love that's right. And so that's the message they're getting is that that's grief to repress, to not show it and be comfortable showing it, however it looks.
Right.
Hmm.
So everything you're saying is pointing to the fact that you are an awesome counselor. And I know
I don't know. Pull my clients, Irene.
so I know you're gonna be starting a private practice specializing in grief counseling
Yeah, yeah.
in this January. It's not far away. So, Sarah, look,
I'm nervous now.
tell us what you're gonna be doing because a few people here may be very interested in
Yeah.
reaching out to you.
Yeah.
Are
Thank
you
you.
gonna do both in-person appointments and telehealth so that they can contact you via Zoom and all that jazz too?
Correct. Yeah, we have. I will be using, a platform that has HIPAA compliant telehealth. But I will also be doing in person. And as I talked about before, one of the reasons I'm excited for private practice is to have a little bit more freedom to do outside stuff. The office that I'm currently renting and will be working out of has access to a lake as well as trails. Yeah. So it's pretty cool to be able to offer clients what I have found, at least, to be so helpful in my grief as far as grounding. So in person, in the office, outside, in nature, telehealth, and then also seeing youth and adults who are grieving.
Which is wonderful, and the thing is that if someone has you'd be great for an adult, but if someone has a child who is grieving or they don't know how to handle the, what's happening with their child, you'd be the perfect person to get in touch with because you know all about that and you can guide
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. And I really and now I wanna come down to, the mission of this podcast is to encourage everyone to heal. So tell me, Sarah, what do you think of the word heal as it relates to grief, and why is it important, in your opinion, for each of us, no matter how painful, to heal?
Hmm. So you're going to laugh, Irene. I don't know if this is going to be sanctioned, but I actually wrote a post on LinkedIn.
Definitely sanctioned here.
I wrote a post on LinkedIn. I guess I try to post weekly on grief content on LinkedIn for multiple reasons, for myself and catharsis, but also I've heard feedback that it's helpful to see a griever who's vulnerable and putting it out there because it is often a stigmatized topic that is not openly talked about, but then also just to normalize the grief experience, right? And so you're going to laugh. I did a post once where the first sentence was, "I'm not sure I like the word heal." And yeah, mainly because I feel like a lot of grief is tied to, well, at least in my line of work and counseling, it can be tied to the medical model instead of a wellness kind of holistic model. And I do believe grief is a natural process, right? That it's a normal process as opposed to a pathology, right? And so for me, when I hear the word heal, I think of like, a wrist or something like that. And so it's taken me a while. You're like laughing at me. Yeah. It's taken me a while to get okay with the term and see it from, instead of a medical perspective, more of a holistic, emotional, right?
Right, well, you've been coming from a very left-brain place,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
now that you've gone through this,
Mm-hmm.
it's opening a few other doors for you, right? Because there's an energetic component to it also, that
Mm-hmm.
healing, that
Absolutely.
that works with someone helps to release,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. And so I think I talk about like learning to carry the loss and learning to carry it forward with you. And how do you do that? And how do you carry it in a way that is manageable for you and it feels authentic for you? Right. And so as far as that goes, I think for me, like I said, it was bringing down the trauma because it was so big. I couldn't see around it. And especially the first year working. So we talk about in the grief counseling field, we talk about the goal is to bring down the trauma. We don't need that up here. We want to work on it and lower it. The goal is to honor the grief, to witness it, to sit with it, to honor it, to companion it. The goal is to trust the client with the grief, right? It's their grief. I can't carry it for you. I don't want to carry it for you. I'm here to witness it and walk with you while you carry it.
And give you strategies to deal with it. Yes.
Yep. Anything that works. We call it tools in the toolbox. What works for you, right? Maybe something that doesn't work for that person over there. So that's how I think I visualize it, is how do you carry this big thing, this big loss, and what does it mean to you, and how do you proceed forward with it?
That's a lot of wisdom there, Sarah. And how does the power of acceptance have to do? What does the power of acceptance have to do with finding joy in life? And we've talked about that too.
Yeah. So, we call it going through traumatic experiences and significant losses. We talk about post-traumatic growth, right? But back in the day, we didn't call it that. It's a very medical term, right? Back in the day, we called it like enlightenment, right? Or just going through a fire and coming out the other side with a different mindset. And while I would like to say that's never quite the goal, because we want to be careful of saying that's not the goal in grief, right? The goal is to get out of bed. The goal is to try to live. It can sometimes be something that happens along the way. And so acceptance to me is, William Worden talks about coming to terms with the loss. That has to be the fundamental building block for what we do. If it's a significant death, we have to accept it.
Well, some people sit in their grief for their whole lives. This is it. I'm not moving forward. This is my pain and all. And other people say that's like a foundation, right? And I can build upon it. I can let certain things go or whatever, right?
Yep. And the meaning you find with it and what you do with it is, like you said, it can be highly variable. But I do think, from what I see and who kind of ends up finding that joy that you talked about, right, even in pain, is someone who creates meaning out of it and finds ways to stay connected to their loved one who's no longer here.
You're doing so beautifully, and you're a role model for people to do that. Sarah,
you too, Irene.
You're welcome. Thank you. We're working on it. We're works in progress. Sarah, in closing, I want to thank you from my heart for your unwavering advocacy and compassion for both grieving children and adults. In your powerful debut picture book, The Sure Thing, you have gently revealed the sacred thread of love that endures beyond loss and given voice to the quiet sorrow so many children carry. By affirming a child's right to grieve with space, acknowledgement, and deep empathy, you offer a radiant light to those navigating the complexities of mourning, and you illuminate a path for others to follow. Thank you once again for this enlightening, insightful, and deeply moving interview, and many blessings to you.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/grief and rebirth to check them out. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, many blessings.